You are looking good. You who are 3 steps above average. I'm Kendall Brian Hunter, and this is the Eyes of Faith podcast. Well, breaking news. Breaking news. The Mandalorian and Grogu, they were knocked out of the number one position after what was it, like 1 week? I'll get to that a little bit later. So, Warfront, more negotiations in the Mideast. I'm reminded of a Dilbert comic that, I had that contest last week. How many times did I cough during that podcast? Things are getting better. I had another rainstorm and the pollen count's low, but it's going to take a while for my body to adjust to that. But the Dilbert comic was about a perpetual newspaper. Pope decries war, tensions in the Mideast, people worried about jobs and inflation. You probably noticed this too. This war feels a little bit different. No boots are on the ground. They sunk the Navy, just took out a lot of the military infrastructure, and doing this stranglehold, this blockade. It's less gruesome. There's less people dying, and hopefully we'll resolve the situation. Although, if you read the Bible, this stuff's been going on in that area for millennia. So the lead story. But before going to lead story, I am author of this book, Consider My Servant Job. Depending upon where you're at in your life, you may need help. This book talks about the book of Job in the Old Testament, about suffering, how turning to Christ can give you the answers that you need. If you need something, you need help, you need comfort, give my book a look and see if I'm confident that'll help you wherever you are out in life. But lead story, PopeBot. It is a very lengthy encyclical. It's actually a book. You've seen pictures. They print these things up as a book, but I had to print this out, of course, at my own expense. It's about 5 chapters, 82 pages, 245 paragraphs. You could have trimmed this down by 25% if you're a aficionado of Strunk and White and you're a good editor. At least that's my opinion. But it begins with 2 images, the Tower of Babel and then the Builders of the Wall, Nehemiah. That's very good visual persuasion. We can picture the Tower of Babel. We picture people building a wall, 2 opposites, a tower leading upward, which is really led downward, and then the walls to protect the city. Now, what's interesting is that with AI, transhumanism, posthumanism, C.S. Lewis covered this in his book Abolition of Man, and he covered it, and that's more of the nonfiction, but in the fiction, his book, That Hideous Strength, it shows what happened when science gets out of control. I had a friend of mine who thought that was the most creepiest book he ever read. So it's part of his space trilogy, Out of the Silent Planet, Paralandra, and then That Hideous Strength. And if you're interested, I recommend giving it a read because he's talking about these things from a Christian point of view, C.S. Lewis and both the Pope. Not from my religious perspective, but there's a close enough overlap where it'll be helpful. So here's some of the pull quotes as I read that I thought were interesting. I don't want to toss it over the shoulder, going to pick it up again, so I'll just magically set it right there. Paragraph 19. No one can demand that religion should be relegated to the inner sanctum of personal life without influence on societal and national life, without concern for the soundness of civil institutions, without a right to offer an opinion on events affecting society. That's actually a quote from Pope Francis. And that's been the issue that as a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has been having these statements on religious freedom. It's the marginalization, secularization, privatization, and pluralization. The privatization that, you can have faith, but keep it to yourself. Which, for all intents and purposes, nullifies it, voids, castrates, emasculates the point of having faith. We have to keep quiet about it. And, let's speak up from the religious point of view. You can't nationalize a state, but you do have a philosophical discussion. Paragraph 26. From this perspective, it is unrealistic to think that the Church's societal doctrine can propose a single response that is valid in all context. There's a word Catholics use called subsidiarity. It means localism. You start with the local people first instead of having a top-down. That's a good principle. I like that. 10th Amendment. 98. It is appropriate to preface this discussion with two considerations. First, any statement regarding AI risks becoming quickly outdated given the remarkable pace at which these systems are developing. Second, all of us, including those who design them, possess only a limited understanding of their actual functioning. Indeed, current AI systems are more cultivated than built. Developers do not directly design every detail, but instead create a framework within which the intelligence grows. As a result, fundamental scientific aspects such as the internal representations and computational process of these systems remain at present unknown. There thus emerges urgent need for a twofold commitment. On the one hand, deepening scientific research. On the other hand, the exercise of moral and spiritual discernment. Let me pause for a moment. Not as bad as last week, is it? 99. So-called artificial intelligences do not undergo experiences, do not possess a body, do not feel joy or pain, do not mature through relationships, do not know from within what love, work, friendship, or responsibility mean, nor do they have a moral conscience, since they do not judge good or evil, grasp ultimate meaning of situations, or bear responsibility for consequences. They may imitate language behavior. You can say this large language model that's predictive. And analytical skills or even simulate empathy and understanding, but they do not understand what they produce, for they lack effective or emotional, relational, and spiritual perspective through which human beings grow in wisdom. Let me skip over that. Okay, it's 106. Calling for prudence, rigorous evaluation, and even at times a slower pace in adopting AI does not mean opposing progress. Instead, is an exercise of responsible care for the human family. This need is all the more urgent given the frequent imbalance between the speed of technological growth and the slower development of awareness norms, safeguards, and institutions capable of governing its effects. It is not enough to invoke ethics in the abstract. Robust legal frameworks and independent oversight inform users in a political system that does not abdicate its responsibility are required. Otherwise, change will be governed only by technocratic thinking, presented as necessary and inevitable, ultimately imposing rules shaped by those who control data, infrastructure, and computing power. If you read Yuval Harari's book Homo Deus, he makes a point. He speculates that in the future, people will worship data. Yeah, what do you think about that, worshiping data in AIs? 113. In reality, elevating any single dimension of human existence to an absolute is always a mistake. Just focusing on one thing, the one-issue parties. Thus, intelligence, when absolutized, overshadows other essential dimensions of life, such as affection, the will, commitment, and relationships. Similarly, technical power is if left unbalanced, does not make us more capable. It makes us more isolated and more vulnerable to being dominated and excluded. This critical point does not oppose intelligence, but serves as a reminder that intelligence becomes self-referential, its true purpose of serving life, and the human person is lost. 136. For this reason, those who control digital platforms and means of communication have a considerable ability to affect the collective imagination and to present a particular vision of reality as desirable. Such power should be constantly guided by the pursuit of truth and respect for human dignity, so that the culture fostered on the internet does not become an instrument of excessive distraction, homogenization, or dominance. Digital attention. That's what we're vying for, the digital attention economy. You're paying attention to me right now as opposed to someone else. So, well, I thank you. And I hope I'm, we're helping each other out. We who are 3 steps above average. 168. This gives rise to a specific public responsibility. And this is in the context of displacement and societal disruption. The state has a duty to support business activity by fostering conditions favorable to employment, promoting work where it is lacking, and defending it in times of crisis, since this is a primary good for families and for society. It's interesting because he talks about the youth needing employment, how you find your vocation in life through working as a teenager, associations, patterns of industry, and when this gets displaced, I mean, Elon Musk thinks that once we have an AI robot economy, things will become essentially cheap to free. The robots doing all the work for free. And, well, will that happen? Won't that happen? Who knows? It hasn't actually happened yet. But is it possible that things will go that way? It's always a dangerous thing to bet against Elon Musk. 183. The digital revolution has changed the nature of conflict. Alongside conventional warfare, there are hybrid forms such as cyber attacks, information manipulation, campaigns of influence, and the automation of strategic decision. AI acts as an accelerating factor in these processes, particularly within the context where many technologies are intrinsically ambivalent. And consequently, what is created for defense can be rapidly repurposed for offense. And the fine line between protection and aggression becomes blurred. And then that's interesting because there's an episode of Star Trek, I think it's called A Taste of Armageddon, classic Trek, Captain Kirk, where they go to this planet, and they have these two planets, or these two countries fighting a war with each other. But they have the computers do it, so the computers run a simulation, said, okay, 300 people died, and so what they do is they randomly pick 300 people to go to the disintegration chambers. Of course, Captain Kirk falls in love with the lady who gets sent to the disintegration chamber, and so he violates the Prime Directive, but that's just funny how the shift to drone warfare in Ukraine, and then automated, and then how Trump's doing with Iran. You have Steven Spielberg and George Lucas watching newsreels from Vietnam and also World War II. We're not doing things that way. We need to break out of that mold. It needs to be reflected in our art. Paragraph 216. There are times when, in order to remain human, we must set aside our reservations and take a stand. For me, that happened a couple of years ago when my parents, my dad had his pickup truck stolen. My mom was having a hip replacement surgery, and my dad had his pickup truck stolen. Okay, that's my Shenandoah moment. For many of you, it was the death of Charlie Kirk. Hopefully for every Republican in Utah, that this time said, okay, if you want to be a human being, if you want to be a person, if you want to have a soul, it's time to take a stand. Things have gone too far to the point where they're killing us. Now, that is the Pope on AI. And Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Elder Gong has been talking about. He was in Athens at a group. He presented a paper. I read excerpts from it on the church news. I wasn't able to find the full text of the talk. Okay. So right now, since the full text of the talk is available, the Pope has the inertia and not an apostle. News blips. Mando and Grogu film. Sorry, I mistyped it. I'm going to talk about that film. You can go to the bathroom right now and you won't miss anything. So I didn't watch it. From the reports, they say it's mediocre. It's made less money than the Solo movie. I actually liked the Solo movie. What ticked me off was Rogue One. I thought it just had too many member berries in it. And you know, they did so many research shoots that what was in the trailer was not in the movie. And they had these cool shots, but they were just missing in the movie, and there's too many member berries. Solo was a little bit better. But, yeah, it's worse. And from what I understand from some of the people who are more into it than I am, this is just actually 3 episodes that they're going to use for the next season of The Mandalorian. But I just put it together in a film. It's a little bit, for those of you who are older, remember the TV show The Man from U.N.C.L.E.? They did a remake film of it recently or a while ago. But they do movies, but these are just episodes, a little bit lengthened out. The same thing with Star Trek: The Motion Picture. That was just a TV episode stretched out to 2 hours. And apparently that's what happened with the Mando film. So it's not bad, but it's not super good. The reason why Hail Mary is doing so well, it's not a super great movie, but compared to what we're getting, it's immensely better. The comparison is what makes it look so good. There's a question: is this filler material or is this just content? Filler material is just there. Maybe filler material and content are the same thing. They're just getting product out there. It's interesting. Now, I've talked about people's attitudes towards life, their operating system. Some people have a psychology where they'll sit there, they'll like the visuals, they'll like the music. It'll be a perfect experience. I had this happen with The Last Jedi. I just came out of that's episode 8. It was just like watching a bad episode of Robotech. But there's some people I was talking to them, it's like, wow, this is great. It's like, this is like one screen, 2 movies. We saw 2 different movies, but it hit me. Just some people are they're just for perceptual. They're there to see Star Wars action figures play around. That's the analogy, homework, and you're playing with your Star Wars action figures on the screen, and you have the pseudo John Williams score, and even though there's no substance to it, you still like it. Very different operating systems, very different approach to life. Just perceptual, the sensual stimulation versus the cognitive comprehensiveness, comprehensive engagement. That's it's just not enough. This whole thing where you're just playing around with action figures on the screen, that's just not working anymore. Are you excited about the Supergirl film? This is James Gunn. He's reinventing the DCEU or DCU. It's not working out well, especially when the actress criticized Christian dads. I talked about that. I think I talked about it last week. I'd tell you to boycott this movie, but you're probably not going to see it anyways. The best thing you can do if you're curious is wait for it to come out on DVD, then check it out at your public library. Don't stream it because that leaves a digital footprint. Checking it out from your public library in a year, because it's not. We don't know. There's just no reason to think that's going to be good. This is just hot chocolate. I'm not drinking brandy or anything. There's a new guy, a real fake wizard. Let me pause for a moment. Boy, oh boy, this is going much better than last week. I don't know what it was, but real fake wizard. He's this guy, has sort of this Gandalf costume that he wears, and he's just like one of many movie critics that what Disney did to Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and the MCU just launched so many movie critic careers on social media. There's people who, if not millionaires, they're doing comfortable off the criticism that Hollywood is getting. Now, I had a pre-existing one, and I just slowly morphed it into what I'm doing right now. But yeah, I consider myself part of that group. It's like, I noticed it with the Fantastic Four, the one with Chiklis in it, the second one, The Rise of the Silver Surfer. That's where I said, okay, this is just garbage. They have good source material, they're not utilizing it, they're utilizing it poorly, and it's just over and over. That's probably when I first noticed. I can't remember what the date is. The Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck, that saved me. I really like that one. But just a lot of people is consistently, even earlier it was with the Star Trek movies. They're just doing them haphazardly. 2, 3, and 4 are a rough trilogy. Thank goodness Leonard Nimoy was involved with it, so he had a say and control, and he could give some direction as best as he could. But I just don't like how they're being written. I had different expectations, and so there you go. But a real fake wizard. He had this video, 100 things Kathleen Kennedy did wrong. So thank you for putting this together. It helped solidify what we were feeling, and it's interesting because one of the points was this thing about criticizing the fan base, toxic fans. Now, there is such a thing as toxic fans. If you're famous, people get creepy. I had this one guy that I said something and he followed me around on my different platforms, criticizing me. And that's mild. Okay. There's people who get death threats. Okay. But when you have a lot of fans saying, okay, this is not what we want, I think it started with Fembusters, Ghostbusters Answer the Call. When the cast started saying, hey, the problem's not us, the problem is you. We didn't produce a bad movie. You guys are just nasty people. It's a very feminine thing to accuse people, to blame other people, to not accept responsibility, to play the victim, to have a pity party. But please remember, the fans are the hands that feed you. And in my case, I'm a shareholder. I'm a shareholder of Comcast, Universal Pictures, Disney, Amazon, which owns MGM Studios. So that gives me voting rights, and I exercise it accordingly. When the time comes up for these studios to have their elections and vote for the board of directors, they hear from me because of that. That's in fact, I'm losing money on some of the stocks. Warner Brothers. I own you just have to buy one share, then you get voting rights. There you go. That's enough for culture. I talked about culture. I'm going to talk a little bit about Battlestar Galactica soon. So there's this report that the mayor of Seattle, socialist Katie Wilson, flatly refused to investigate fraud at the Somali daycare centers. You see, that's a business model. It's not just one state. It's a business model that this community has adopted, and not just community. Every community has adopted this fraud business model. And pay attention to her framework. Now, she was asked if she's going to investigate fraud. Now, they've been doing this at the Department of Justice, and they're doing some convictions right now. Says she, says the mayor, this whole issue is not really about fraud. It's about dividing and conquering. It's about making an immigrant community to target. There's no reason to assume, based on the identity of a daycare operator, that the small business is doing anything wrong. No, I know you saw it. No said her operating system is to play the race card. So white socialist mayor. Apparently she was educated at Oxford, but I don't think she finished her degree, from what the Wikipedia reports. But no, said she was just playing the race card. No, the issue isn't. In their case, may admit, but if you haven't investigated, you can't say that for certain. You're choosing not to investigate, so you do have a prosecutorial discretion. You can't. It's impossible to investigate everything, but you notice her model. She is, you're just people doing sort of a bunch of racist. Now, where does that operating system lead? No, we know where it leads. Not surprising news. Mark Hamill criticized the MFA arena. Is that it? That's not the right acronym. The mixed arena that Trump's building up on the White House lawn. Mark Hamill criticized that. Not surprising. Not surprising. Mayor Mamdani not going to the Israel Day parade, even though they're his constituents. You do that for everyone. No. You're Jewish. You go to the St. Patrick's Day parade. Everyone's happy. I just got a phone call right in the middle of that. America 250, it's coming up. Are you getting ready? How you express it is going to be up to you personally. You're going to have a good experience. So choose to do at least one thing for America 250 that you'll remember, and remember generations that you'll remember years later, maybe even generations later. Okay, culture content. As you know, I started watching Battlestar Galactica, the reimagined. I realized I'm really late to the party, but I was busy in the 90s going to college and 2000s, and so I had other things going on, so I'm making up for it. It's free on Pluto TV, so I'll watch it. You cannot escape the 9/11 sensibilities. Oh, that's from Washington D.C. Must call it. First of all, the ships, they gave it the whole number 75. I wonder why they didn't give it 78, which is the year the original series came out. That would have been a nice touch. So the episode is called Water. So they have a saboteur on, and you have these sleeper cells, 9/11 sensibilities. It's great, but the male bashing begins, and you have Colonel Ty, original series, black actor, the white actor who looks like John McCain. He's just a slobbering drunk, and he's just panicky about losing his liquor. And you remember the verse, he's playing cards with Starbuck, and he cheated. That's what white male men do to you. Tyrell, he's the repair the mechanic for the Viper, is just mean to his female assistant. Then you have Billy. Billy is the chief of staff or the personal assistant to the originally Secretary of Education, but now the president of the colony, the de facto president. I'm sorry, I was getting some messages on my phone, but it's kind of funny because he's very awkward, bumbling. He reminds me of Vir Koto from Battlestar Galactica, and it's interesting because of in reality, you wouldn't get to that position being the chief of staff of someone who's a cabinet level if you were just lack confidence. You would have okay, so that's that. Okay, I see what the message is about, so don't do what I'm doing right now, but the point is, this is really bad writing. You'd be more aggressive, you'd be more into it, you'd be more forcible, you'd have a stronger drive, you'd have your own ambitions, and it's just not believable. But the question is, you have this with these three men. So Adam is male, but he's a minority, and his son Apollo would also be. But why would someone write things this way? Because it's very unbalanced. What psychological need is being met? By a person who writes it, by a person who watches it. Now, I'm watching it just to become informed. I'm not buying into it. I'm criticizing this approach. But think about what's going on, how culture and attitudes are being shaped. That you have these three levels of engagement. You have the philosophical, and that's the technical journals. JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, Lancet. You have technical rarefied things, and you have the popular level. So that's the philosophical. You have the popular level. That's the level of nonfiction, popular science, popular mechanics, but also the TV shows you watch. You have the interpersonal one. That's communication, like what we're having right there. You notice how these attitudes are being shifted. And I mentioned this earlier, C.S. Lewis's book, The Abolition of Man and That Hideous Strength. How the abolition of man, that's the technical one. And then that hideous strength is the popular, or the technical one is the popular, the entertainment, the arts, where he's illustrating these ideas, where these science out of control goes to. But you ought to be bothered by it if you're not feeling bothered. Okay, why are they writing this? Why are they depicting men this way? What's the particular need to do this? Why do you have the ranking white male as an alcoholic, mean, drunk, divorced, deadbeat dad? That's intentional messaging. And like I said with my last one, this is when science fiction died. This set the pattern for the things that's going on with Star Wars, Star Trek, the MCU, for what things are doing with Indiana Jones. It started with Battlestar Galactica. Now, what keeps it afloat? Battlestar Galactica has good casting, good writing, but the bad DEI messaging. What Disney has is bad casting, Captain Marvel, bad writing, and then the bad DI messaging. And so that's why it's collapsing. That's just keeping Battlestar Galactica afloat. So that's enough of the news comment. We're about a half an hour. We've been much better than last week. Precinct chair. I sent an email to people at the precinct about branding at the primary election. Focus on the message of confidence. Confidence versus unease. When you vote Republican, you vote confidence. You're going to feel confident about yourself. You know, think of the Artemis II, and then you contrast that to California just burning down. So, confidence, it's more of an attitude rather than a political party. So let me skip over. No pointers. Just take care of yourself and take it easy. This week is the fifth Sunday lesson about the Declaration of Independence. How's that going to go in your ward? There's some wards with some of these extremist people. That'll be interesting because of people confuse politics with partisanships. Now, if I was teaching the lesson, I'd be coughing a lot, but probably would do just what Heber J. Grant did. He emphasized the word of wisdom. And what did he do? In conference, he just get up there and he just read the word of wisdom to the congregation. That'd be it. It's like, okay, here it is. And I wonder if that is what the approach that should work. Just read the Declaration of Independence. But you do need to expound certain things and contextualize and make relevant the context of these things. Now, I'd make a distinction between politics versus partisanship. Political parties are not church organizations. Being a member of a political party is not a church calling. You're not set apart to be a member of a political party. It's not like a patriarchal blessing. You're from the tribe of Ephraim and you're going to be in this political party. It's not a mission call. The brethren, the prophet does not call you to be a member of a political party. And political affiliation is not tracked on membership records. Let's keep all those in mind. It's people are treating this like it's a religion when it's not. On the other hand, people get attached to it and they start thinking there's a spiritual component and it just gets all jumbled in their head. Now another thing to think about this too is names. I'm gonna say something that's an amalgamation of what King Benjamin taught, but also in 3rd Nephi, that we're supposed to take upon ourselves the name of Christ, not the name of our political parties. The affiliation is the name of Christ, and that's what's paramount and important. And as it says in Mosiah chapter 5, if it's some other name, then you're going to be on the left hand of God. So if you're there and say, well, I'm going to put my political party affiliation ahead of my church membership, ahead of the name of Christ, which Moses Thatcher did, and B.H. Roberts almost did, you're going to be on the left hand of God. Now, there's an argument saying, well, let's do a both-and approach. Take upon yourself the name of Christ, but also our political party. C.S. Lewis talked about this in Mere Christianity, Christianity and vegetarianism, etc. I can't remember the chapter to do this off the top of my head. But my response is that when you do this both-and approach, it's something Christ warned about. And what Christ said is declare more or less than that, adding to or taking away. You're building on a foundation of sand. And it's this issue needing to find affiliation with your political party and putting that ahead of your allegiance and your covenant to Christ. And then you teach the lesson. So we're at 33 minutes, much better than last week. I thank you for your patience, and that's the passing scene. Seen with the eyes of faith.